The words weren't meant for her ears, but Tamsin heard every single one. She had been standing just outside the great hall of Thornwick Manor, her heart still racing from the impossible discovery she'd made only moments before: the mate bond. It had finally awakened after 23 years of silence, and it had chosen him. Alpha Corvin Blackthorn, the most powerful alpha in the Northern Territories. The man she had secretly loved since she was old enough to understand what love meant. For one breathless moment she had believed the goddess had finally smiled upon her. That all those years of being invisible, of being the forgotten daughter, of being nothing, were about to end. Then she heard his voice through the crack in the door, cold and dismissive, speaking to his inner circle. "The bond means nothing. She means nothing to me. I won't claim some low-born Omega just because fate made a mistake. I'll reject her before the moon rises, and we'll never speak of this again." Laughter followed. The cruel, cutting sound of men who had never known what it meant to be powerless. Tamsin didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She simply turned and walked away. Into the night. Into the unknown. Into a future that no one, least of all Alpha Corvin, could have predicted. Because what he didn't know, what no one in Thornwick had ever bothered to discover, was that Tamsin wasn't just a forgotten Omega with no family and no standing. She was something far more, something ancient, something that would shake the very foundations of his pack and bring the mighty Alpha to his knees. He called her nothing. He would learn how wrong he was, and by the time he realized the truth, by the time he understood what he had so carelessly thrown away, it would nearly be too late to save either of them. The morning had started like any other. Tamsin woke before dawn in her small room at the edge of the pack house, the one farthest from the central heating, the one that had been hers since she was 7 years old, and her mother had died in the winter sickness that swept through Thornwick. No one had claimed her. No relatives had stepped forward. She had simply become part of the background, another mouth to feed, another pair of hands to work, another Omega to be ignored. She dressed quickly in the dim light, pulling on worn clothes that had been mended too many times to count. The fabric was thin at the elbows, and the color had faded from deep green to something closer to gray, but it was clean. She always made sure of that. Cleanliness was one of the few dignities she could control. The pack house was already stirring as she made her way to the kitchens. Thornwick was one of the largest packs in the Northern Territories, with nearly 300 wolves spread across a vast estate of forests and mountains. The manor itself was ancient, built of dark stone that seemed to absorb the light, with towers that pierced the perpetually gray sky. It was beautiful in a cold, imposing way. Much like its alpha. Tamsin pushed that thought aside as she had done 1,000 times before. Corvin Blackthorn was not for her. He was the Alpha, born of a bloodline so pure it was said his ancestors had been blessed by the moon goddess herself. He was power and authority and devastating beauty, with hair as black as midnight and eyes the color of a winter storm. And she was no one. She had accepted that truth long ago, or so she told herself. The kitchens were warm and bustling with activity when she arrived. Tonight was the bonding moon, the sacred monthly gathering where unmated wolves prayed to the goddess for the blessing of finding their fated mate. Tamsin had attended every single one since she came of age, standing at the back of the great hall, hoping and praying and believing that someday the bond would awaken for her. 23 years old and still nothing. Most wolves found their mates by 20. Some whispered that she was cursed. Others simply forgot she existed at all. "You're late," snapped Odessa, the head cook, without looking up from the bread she was kneading. "The linens need pressing, and the silver needs polishing. The Alpha wants everything perfect for tonight." "Yes, ma'am," Tamsin murmured, already moving toward the storage room. She worked through the morning without rest, her hands moving automatically through tasks she had performed countless times. Press the linens, polish the silver, arrange the flowers, set the tables. Invisible labor for an invisible girl. It was just past noon when it happened. Tamsin was carrying a stack of freshly pressed tablecloths through the east corridor, her mind wandering to the ceremony tonight, when she turned a corner and collided directly with a wall of muscle and heat. The tablecloths scattered, her body pitched forward, and then strong hands caught her, steadying her, pulling her upright with an ease that spoke of immense strength. She looked up. Alpha Corvin Blackthorn stared down at her. For a single, suspended moment, their eyes met. His were gray, pale, and piercing, framed by dark lashes and darker brows. This close, she could see the sharp cut of his jaw, the fullness of his lower lip, the faint scar that traced along his temple from some long-ago battle. He was beautiful. Terrifyingly, impossibly beautiful. And then something inside her chest cracked open. It started as warmth, blooming behind her ribs, spreading outward like sunlight breaking through clouds. Her wolf, dormant and quiet for so many years, suddenly surged to the surface with a force that nearly buckled her knees. Every nerve ending in her body came alive. Every sense sharpened to impossible clarity. She could smell him now. Pine and wood smoke and something darker, something primal. She could hear his heartbeat, strong and steady. She could feel the heat radiating from his skin even through his clothes. The mate bond. After 23 years of silence, it had finally awakened. And it had chosen him. Corvin's hands tightened on her arms, his nostrils flared. Something flickered in those storm-gray eyes. Recognition, perhaps. Or maybe shock. You, he breathed. Tamsin's heart soared. He felt it too. He had to feel it. The bond was unmistakable, undeniable, a thread of pure golden light connecting her soul to his. But before she could speak, before she could say anything at all, Corvin released her as if her skin had burned him. He stepped back, his expression shuddering into something cold and hard. Go, he said, his voice like ice. Get out of my sight. Then he turned and walked away. Tamsin stood frozen in the corridor, the tablecloth scattered at her feet, her heart still racing with the impossible truth. He had felt it. She knew he had. So why had he looked at her like that? Why had he pulled away? She gathered the linens with trembling hands and continued her work, but her mind was spinning. Tonight was the bonding moon. Perhaps he needed time. Perhaps the shock had overwhelmed him. Perhaps, when the ceremony began and the goddess's light filled the hall, he would come to her, and everything would change. She held on to that hope like a lifeline. By the time evening fell, Tamsin had convinced herself that it would be all right. She dressed in the only decent dress she owned, a simple gown of pale blue that her mother had made years ago, and made her way to the great hall with the others. The ceremony was beautiful, as always. Candles flickered, incense burned. The Alpha stood at the front, magnificent in black formal wear, his presence commanding the attention of every wolf in the room. Tamsin waited at the back, her heart hammering. Any moment now, he would acknowledge her. Any moment, he would call her forward. Any moment. The ceremony ended. The Alpha turned and left through the private entrance without so much as a glance in her direction. Something cracked inside her chest. She couldn't stay here. She couldn't breathe. She needed air. Tamsin slipped out through a side door and found herself in the corridor that led to the Alpha's private study. She didn't mean to eavesdrop. She only meant to catch her breath, to gather herself, to find some explanation for his coldness. But then she heard voices through the study door, which stood slightly ajar. You should have seen the look on her face. That was Aldrich, the beta, his voice dripping with amusement. The little Omega actually thought you would claim her. Laughter from several others. And then Corvin's voice, flat and final. The bond means nothing. She means nothing to me. I won't claim some low-born Omega just because fate made a mistake. I'll reject her before the moon rises, and will never speak of this again. More laughter. Someone clapped the Alpha on the back. Tamsin's entire world collapsed. She stood in that corridor, invisible as always, listening to them mock her, listening to him dismiss her, listening to the sound of her own heart shattering into 1,000 pieces. She didn't cry. The tears wouldn't come. There was only a vast, cold emptiness spreading through her chest, numbing everything it touched. She means nothing to me. The words echoed in her skull, over and over, each repetition driving the blade deeper. Tamsin turned away from the door. She walked back through the manor, past the servants who didn't notice her, past the wolves who had never seen her at all. She climbed the stairs to her small, cold room and stood in the center of it, looking at the meager possessions of a meager life. Nothing. She was nothing. But she refused to stay here and be formally rejected like a stray dog being turned away from the table. She refused to give him that satisfaction, to let him stand before the pack and publicly sever the bond while everyone watched and laughed. She was nothing to him? Fine. Then she would become nothing at all. Tamsin packed a single bag with everything she owned. It didn't take long. She left her key on the bedside table, walked down the servants' stairs, and slipped out through the kitchen entrance. The night was cold. The moon hung full and heavy above the trees. She didn't look back. The forest swallowed her whole. Tamsin walked for hours through the darkness, guided by nothing but instinct and the desperate need to put as much distance between herself and Thornwick as possible. The bond in her chest pulsed with each step, a constant ache that reminded her of everything she was leaving behind. Not that she was leaving much. A cold room, a life of servitude, a pack that had never wanted her, and him. She stumbled over a root and caught herself against a tree, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The temperature had dropped as the night deepened, and her thin coat offered little protection against the mountain wind. Her fingers were already numb, her feet ached from the uneven terrain, but she kept walking. She had no destination in mind. She only knew that she couldn't stay in Thornwick, couldn't watch him take another mate, couldn't spend the rest of her life as a ghost in her own pack. Her mother used to tell her stories about wolves who left their packs and wandered alone. Rogues, they were called, outcasts who had chosen exile over subjugation. Most of them died within a year, from starvation, from exposure, from rival packs who killed trespassers on sight. Perhaps that would be her fate. At least, it would be her choice. The moon had shifted past its peak when Tamsin finally allowed herself to rest. She found a hollow beneath an ancient oak, the roots forming a natural shelter against the wind. She curled into the smallest shape she could manage, pressed her back against the rough bark, and closed her eyes. She didn't sleep. Every sound made her flinch, the rustle of leaves, the distant howl of wolves, the creak of branches overhead. But she was too exhausted to move, too numb to feel properly afraid. She means nothing to me. The words wouldn't stop echoing. As dawn broke gray and cold through the canopy, Tamsin forced herself to stand. Her body screamed in protest, her stomach cramped with hunger, but she kept walking, deeper into the mountains, farther from everything she had ever known. Back in Thornwick, the morning sun revealed an empty room. Aldrich was the first to notice. He had been sent to fetch the Omega, to bring her before the Alpha for the formal rejection. But when he pushed open the door to her quarters, he found only bare walls and an abandoned key. "She's gone," he reported to Corvin an hour later, his voice carrying a hint of irritation. "Must have run off in the night like a coward." Corvin stood by the window of his study, staring out at the frost-covered grounds. His jaw tightened at the news, but his expression remained impassive. "Good," he said. "Saves me the trouble. Should I send trackers after her? Why would I waste resources on an Omega?" Corvin turned away from the window, his voice cold. "Let her go. She won't survive a week in the wild. The problem will solve itself." Aldrich nodded, a smirk playing at the corner of his mouth. "As you say, Alpha." He left, and Corvin was alone. For a long moment the Alpha didn't move. He stood perfectly still, his hands clasped behind his back, his face a mask of indifference. But beneath that mask, something stirred. He had felt the bond. Of course he had. The moment their eyes met in that corridor, it had slammed into him with the force of a hurricane, golden and warm and absolute. His wolf had roared with recognition, had clawed at his insides, demanding that he claim her, protect her, make her his. He had almost done it. For one dangerous moment, he had almost pulled her into his arms and never let go. But then he remembered. The prophecy. The curse. The warning that had been passed down through generations of Blackthorn alphas. Claim your true mate, and your bloodline ends. Your power fades. Your pack falls. His father had told him on his deathbed. His grandfather had carried the same burden. Every alpha before him had either rejected their fated mate or died trying to keep them. The curse was ancient, unbreakable, and it demanded a terrible sacrifice. So Corvin had done what he needed to do. He had pushed her away. He had said cruel things, knowing that every word would drive her further from him. He had made himself into a monster so that she would hate him enough to leave. It was the only way to save her. But now, standing alone in his study, Corvin pressed a hand to his chest where the bond still pulsed, fainter now, stretched thin by distance, but undeniably present. She was still alive. He could feel her somewhere to the north, moving deeper into the mountains, running from him. His wolf howled in anguish. "It is better this way," Corvin told himself. "She'll find another pack, another life. She'll be safe." But even as he spoke the words, a strange cold crept into his bones. It had been there for weeks now, a chill that no fire could warm, a fatigue that no sleep could cure. He had dismissed it as stress, as the weight of leadership. But this morning, it was worse. His fingers were numb. His reflection in the window looked pale, almost gray. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Enter. The pack healer, an elderly woman named Vesna, stepped inside. Her face was lined with concern. Alpha," she said quietly. "We need to talk. About your condition." Corvin's jaw tightened. "There's nothing to discuss. The cold in your blood is spreading. I can smell it on you." Vesna took a step closer, her eyes sharp despite her age. "This isn't normal fatigue, Alpha. This is something else. Something old." "I said there's nothing to discuss." "The bond," Vesna pressed, ignoring his dismissal. "You felt it yesterday, didn't you? The true mate bond." Silence. "I've served 4 generations of Blackthorn alphas," the healer continued softly. "I know about the curse, and I know what happens when an alpha rejects his fated mate." She paused, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. "You're dying, Corvin. The rejection is killing you from the inside out, and if you don't find her, if you don't complete the bond, you'll be dead before the winter solstice." Corvin turned slowly to face her. His expression was stone, his eyes were ice, but beneath his shirt, pressed against his chest, his heart beat with a cold that grew deeper by the hour. 3 days. 3 days of walking, of hiding, of slowly starving in the wilderness. Tamsin had lost track of direction sometime on the 2nd day. The mountains all looked the same, endless peaks of gray stone and dark pine, rivers that cut through valleys like silver scars. She drank from streams when she could find them and ate nothing at all. Her body was failing. She could feel it in the trembling of her limbs, the fog creeping into her thoughts, the way her wolf had grown silent and still inside her chest. The mate bond pulsed weakly, a constant reminder of what she had left behind. Not that it mattered now. She would die out here. She had accepted that. Perhaps it was better this way, a quiet end in the wilderness, unmarked and unmourned. At least she wouldn't have to watch him reject her publicly. At least she wouldn't have to see him take another mate. At least she wouldn't have to hear those words again. "She means nothing to me." Tamsin collapsed against a boulder as the sun began to set on the 3rd day. The cold was bone deep now. Her fingers had gone from numb to burning. Her vision kept blurring at the edges. This was how it ended. Not with fire and fury, but with a slow fade into nothing. How fitting. She closed her eyes and let the darkness take her. She woke to warmth. That was the first shock. Actual warmth, spreading through her frozen limbs like sunlight after a long winter. She was lying on something soft. Furs, maybe, or thick blankets. The air smelled of wood smoke and herbs and something sweet she couldn't identify. Tamsin opened her eyes. She was in a cabin. Small but well-built, with exposed wooden beams and a fire crackling in a stone hearth. Through the window she could see mountains, different mountains than the ones she had been wandering. Gentler slopes, covered in silver birch instead of dark pine. She tried to sit up, and immediately regretted it. Pain lanced through her skull, and her vision swam. Easy. A hand pressed gently against her shoulder, easing her back down. You nearly died. Give your body time to remember how to live. Tamsin turned her head. A woman sat beside the bed. She was old, older than anyone Tamsin had ever seen, with white hair braided down her back and eyes the color of amber. Deep lines creased her face, but there was strength in those features, authority in the set of her jaw, and power. Tamsin could feel it radiating from her like heat from a flame. Who are you? Tamsin's voice came out as a rasp. My name is Veda. The woman's lips curved into a slight smile. And you, child, are very far from home. I don't have a home. No? Then what pack do you belong to? None. The word tasted bitter. Not anymore. Veda studied her for a long moment, those amber eyes seeing far more than Tamsin was comfortable with. Then she nodded slowly. We found you at the edge of our territory. Another hour and the cold would have taken you. She reached for a cup on the bedside table and pressed it into Tamsin's hands. Drink. It will help restore your strength. The liquid was warm and tasted of honey and something medicinal. Tamsin drank it slowly, feeling the heat spread through her chest. Where am I? She asked when the cup was empty. Ravencrest. Veda took the cup back and set it aside. We're a small pack, but we take care of our own, and those who wander to our borders with death in their eyes. Ravencrest. Tamsin had heard the name before, whispered in Thornwick like a dark legend. A pack of outcasts and exiles, ruled by a mysterious alpha who answered to no one. I should go, she said, attempting to rise again. I don't want to cause trouble. You'll stay. Veda's voice was gentle but firm, at least until you're strong enough to walk without collapsing. Our alpha has already granted you sanctuary. Your alpha? Tamsin's heart clenched with old fear. He knows I'm here? She. And yes, she knows everything that happens in Ravencrest. Veda's smile returned, warmer this time. You have nothing to fear here, child. This is a place for wolves who have been broken by other packs. We do not judge. We do not cast out. We heal. Tamsin wanted to believe her. Goddess, she wanted to believe that such a place could exist. But she had spent too many years learning that kindness always came with a price. Why would you help me? She whispered. I'm no one. I have nothing to offer. Veda's expression shifted. Something ancient moved behind those amber eyes, something knowing. No one. She tilted her head, studying Tamsin with renewed intensity. Is that what they told you? Is that what you believe? It's the truth. Child. Veda leaned closer, her voice dropping low. I am the oldest wolf in these mountains. I have seen things that would turn your blood to ice, and I am telling you now, there is something inside you that your former pack never bothered to see. Something powerful. Something old. Tamsin shook her head. You're wrong. I'm just an Omega. I don't have any power. I'm not— Your eyes, Veda interrupted softly. Tamsin froze. When we found you, when you were more dead than alive, your eyes opened for just a moment. The old wolf's voice was barely a whisper now. They were gold, child. Pure molten gold. The eyes of a first wolf. The words hung in the air between them. First wolf. The ancient bloodline that had existed before packs, before hierarchies, before the division between Alpha and Omega. Wolves of pure power, blessed directly by the moon goddess herself. They were legends, myths, stories told to pups around dying fires. They weren't real. That's impossible, Tamsin breathed. I'm an orphan. My mother was nobody. She was your mother, Veda said quietly, was one of us. A daughter of Ravencrest who left many years ago to follow her fated mate into another territory. She paused. Her name was Sarah, and she was the last of the first wolf bloodline before she disappeared. The room seemed to spin. No, Tamsin whispered. No, that can't be right. She never said anything. She never told me. She was protecting you. The first wolf bloodline is hunted, child. There are those who would kill to possess such power, and those who would kill simply to destroy it. Veda's hand came to rest over Tamsin's. Your mother hid you in plain sight, made you believe you were ordinary, made everyone believe it. Tears burned behind Tamsin's eyes. All those years of being invisible, all those years of being nothing. And it had been a disguise. A cage built to keep her safe, a cage that had nearly killed her anyway. The power is waking now, Veda continued. The mate bond activated it. Whatever happened with your fated mate, it broke something open inside you. The first wolf is rising to the surface. Tamsin thought of Corvin, of his cold eyes and cruel words, of the bond that still pulsed in her chest, fainter now, but undeniably present. He rejected me, she said hollowly. The Alpha of Thornwick, he said I meant nothing to him. Veda's eyes hardened. Then he is a fool. He's going to formally reject the bond. That's why I ran. I couldn't stay and let him. Listen to me. Veda's grip on her hand tightened. The bond is not broken yet. A rejection must be spoken face to face, witnessed by the goddess. Until that happens, the bond remains. And as long as it remains, you are connected to him. Tamsin's stomach turned. I don't want to be connected to him. Perhaps not. But you may not have a choice. Veda released her hand and stood slowly. Rest now. In the morning, I will take you to our Alpha. She will want to meet the daughter of Sarah. She moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing, she said without turning. You asked why we would help you. Why we would take in a stranger with nothing to offer. Tamsin waited. It is because I knew your mother, child. She was my daughter. Veda looked back over her shoulder, and for the first time, Tamsin saw the grief that lived behind those ancient eyes. Which makes you my granddaughter, and the only family I have left. The door closed softly behind her. Tamsin stared at the ceiling, her mind reeling. She had come here expecting to die. Instead, she had found something impossible. A bloodline. A grandmother. A power she had never known existed. And somewhere far to the south, connected to her by a bond he had tried to destroy, Alpha Corvin Blackthorn had no idea that the nothing he had thrown away was about to become everything. 2 months had passed since Tamsin walked into the wilderness to die. 2 months since she had been found at the border of Ravencrest, more ghost than girl, with death already settling into her bones. 2 months since everything changed. She stood now in the training grounds behind the main lodge, her bare feet planted in the frost-hardened earth, her hands raised before her. Power hummed beneath her skin, gold and ancient and terrifyingly vast. It had taken weeks to learn how to summon it without losing control, longer still to shape it into something useful. But Veda had been patient, and Tamsin had been desperate. Again, her grandmother commanded from the edge of the clearing. Tamsin closed her eyes and reached inward. The power was always there now, coiled at the base of her spine like a sleeping serpent. She breathed deep, felt it stir, and called it forth. Golden light erupted from her palms. It arced across the clearing in a controlled wave, striking the row of wooden targets with enough force to splinter them into fragments. The energy dissipated a moment later, leaving nothing but the smell of ozone and the sound of Tamsin's ragged breathing. Better. Veda approached slowly, her amber eyes gleaming with approval. Your control improves every day. It's not enough. Tamsin lowered her hands, frustration bleeding into her voice. I can destroy things, but I can't heal. I know. Veda stopped beside her, placing a weathered hand on her shoulder. The first wolf bloodline carries both gifts: destruction and restoration. But the healing requires something you have not yet found. What? Peace. Veda's voice softened. The destruction comes from your pain, child, your anger. Those are powerful fuels, but they burn only in one direction. To heal, you must first heal yourself. Tamsin looked away. She knew what Veda meant. The bond. Even after 2 months, it still pulsed in her chest, weaker now, stretched thin by distance, but present. A constant reminder of everything she had lost, everything she had never truly had. She had tried to ignore it, to bury it beneath training and exhaustion and the new life she was building here. But at night, in the quiet darkness of her cabin, she still felt him, still dreamed of storm-gray eyes and cold words that had shattered her world. She means nothing to me. The bond will kill you eventually, if left unresolved, Veda said quietly, reading her thoughts with unsettling accuracy. A true mate bond is not meant to be stretched like this. It demands completion or severance. Anything else is slow poison. Then let it poison me. Tamsin's voice hardened. I won't go back to him. I won't give him the satisfaction of rejecting me to my face. Veda studied her for a long moment, then sighed. Come. Alpha Rhea wishes to speak with you. They walked together through the village, a collection of sturdy cabins nestled in a valley between silver-capped peaks. Ravencrest was smaller than Thornwick, perhaps 80 wolves in total, but there was a warmth here that Tamsin had never experienced before. People nodded to her as she passed. Children waved. No one looked through her as if she didn't exist. It still felt strange, being seen. The Alpha's lodge stood at the center of the village, larger than the others but built with the same practical simplicity. Tamsin had met Rhea only twice before, brief encounters that had left her in awe of the woman who ruled this place. Alpha Rhea was not what she had expected. Where Corvin radiated cold power and dominance, Rhea projected something different. A quiet strength, a steadiness that felt like bedrock. She was tall and lean, with silver-streaked dark hair and eyes the color of mountain streams. There was no cruelty in her gaze, only wisdom and a warrior's edge. Tamsin. Rhea rose from behind her desk as they entered, gesturing to the chairs before the fire. Please, sit. We have much to discuss. Tamsin sat, her spine straight, her hands folded in her lap. Old habits die hard. I'll be direct, Rhea continued, settling into the chair across from her. Word has reached me from the Southern Territories. Alpha Corvin of Thornwick has issued a formal request for alliance negotiations with Ravencrest. Tamsin's blood turned to ice. He wants to meet, Rhea continued, watching her carefully. Here, on our territory. His message claims it concerns a growing threat. Rogue attacks along the mountain passes that border both our lands. He proposes a joint defense. And you believe him? Tamsin forced the words past the tightness in her throat. I believe the rogue attacks are real. Our scouts have confirmed unusual activity in the eastern mountains. Something is driving wolves from their territories, pushing them toward ours. Rhea paused. Whether Corvin's motives are purely strategic, I cannot say. Veda spoke from her position by the door. He's dying. Both women turned to look at her. The curse of the Blackthorn line, Veda continued quietly. I suspected it when I heard he had found his true mate and rejected her. The curse demands that each alpha claim his fated mate or perish. By pushing Tamsin away, he sealed his own death. Tamsin's heart clenched despite herself. He's dying? The cold in his blood grows worse each day. By winter's end, it will consume him entirely. Veda's amber eyes met hers. Unless the bond is completed. Then let him die. The words came out harsh, bitter. Tamsin barely recognized her own voice. He made his choice. Perhaps, Rhea said carefully. But his death would leave Thornwick vulnerable. A pack without an alpha falls into chaos, and chaos in the south would eventually reach us here. You want me to save him? Tamsin's hands curled into fists. After everything he did, I want you to consider what you truly desire. Rhea leaned forward, her stream-colored eyes intense. You have power now, Tamsin. Power he never knew you possessed. Power that could reshape the balance between our packs entirely. She paused. The question is, what will you do with it? Tamsin stared into the fire, watching the flames dance and twist. 2 months ago, she had been nothing. A shadow. A ghost that everyone looked through. Now she was something else entirely. A first wolf. A weapon. A force that even alphas would have to reckon with. And somewhere to the south, the man who had broken her heart was slowly freezing to death. When does he arrive? She asked finally. Rhea smiled, a small, knowing curve of her lips. 3 days. He came with the dawn. Tamsin watched from the window of her cabin as the Thornwick delegation crested the ridge above the valley. 12 wolves in total, riding in formation through the snow. And at their head, unmistakable even at this distance, rode Alpha Corvin Blackthorn. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She had prepared for this. 2 months of training, of building walls around her wounded heart, of becoming someone new. She had told herself she was ready. She wasn't. Because even now, even after everything, the bond in her chest surged at his presence. It recognized him, reached for him, sang with a desperate longing that made her want to scream. She clenched her jaw and forced the feeling down. He was nothing to her now, just as she had been nothing to him. Corvin felt her the moment he entered the valley. The bond, that thread of gold that had been slowly dimming for 2 months, suddenly blazed to life in his chest. His wolf surged forward, howling with recognition, with need, with a desperate joy that he ruthlessly suppressed. She was here. She was alive. She was close. His hands tightened on the reins, knuckles white beneath his gloves. The cold in his blood pulsed harder, as if in response to her proximity. Ice had spread past his chest now, creeping down his arms, numbing his fingers even through the leather. Vesna had given him 6 weeks, maybe less. He had told himself he came for the alliance, for the strategic necessity of protecting his borders. He had lied. The Ravencrest Alpha met them at the entrance to the village, a striking woman with silver-streaked hair and eyes that missed nothing. Corvin dismounted and approached her with the careful respect one showed a fellow Alpha on their own territory. Alpha Rhea. He inclined his head. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Alpha Corvin. Her voice was cool but civil. Ravencrest welcomes you and your wolves, though I suspect you've come for more than rogue patrols. Corvin's jaw tightened. I don't know what you mean. No? Rhea's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Then you won't be interested to know that the Omega you rejected 2 months ago is now a full member of my pack, and that she's developed rather impressive abilities since arriving. The world stopped. His voice cracked. He forced composure back into his features. Tamsin is here? She is. Rhea gestured toward the main lodge, and she's agreed to attend the negotiations. Whether she agrees to anything else remains to be seen. She turned and walked away, leaving Corvin standing in the snow with his heart threatening to break through his ribs. The great hall of Ravencrest was smaller than Thornwick's, but infinitely warmer. Fires burned in 3 hearths along the walls, and the long table in the center was set with food and drink. Corvin barely noticed any of it, because she was there. Tamsin stood beside Alpha Rhea at the head of the table, her back straight, her chin lifted. She wore clothes he had never seen, dark leather and silver embroidery, the formal attire of a ranked pack member. Her dark hair, once always tied back in servant's fashion, now fell in loose waves past her shoulders. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold. They had been brown before, ordinary brown, the color of autumn leaves. Now they held flickers of gold, ancient, powerful gold that spoke of bloodlines he had only heard about in legends. She looked at him with those impossible eyes, and her expression revealed nothing. Alpha Corvin. Her voice was steady, cool, a stranger's voice. How unexpected to see you here. Tamsin. He took a step forward, then stopped when he saw her stiffen. I need to explain. There's nothing to explain. She cut him off with surgical precision. You made your feelings clear. I believe your exact words were, "She means nothing to me." A pause, sharp as a blade. I heard every word, Corvin, through the door of your study, while you and your men laughed. The silence that followed was suffocating. Corvin felt the eyes of both delegations on him. His own wolves shifted uncomfortably. Aldrich, standing 2 paces behind him, had gone very still. You weren't meant to hear that, Corvin said quietly. No. I was meant to stand before you the next morning and be formally rejected like a stray dog. Tamsin's voice didn't waver. Was there to be laughter at that ceremony too? Were your wolves going to applaud when you severed the bond? It wasn't. He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. I can explain. If you'll just let me. I don't want your explanations. Tamsin stepped forward, and the gold in her eyes flared brighter. The temperature in the room shifted, not colder, but charged, electric, like the air before a lightning strike. I want you to understand something, Alpha Corvin. She stopped 3 feet from him, close enough that he could see the pulse hammering at her throat, close enough that her scent wrapped around him, wildflowers and rain and something new, something powerful that made his wolf whine with confusion. I am not nothing, she said softly. I was never nothing. I was simply invisible to people too blind to see. Her chin lifted higher. But I see myself now, and I will never let anyone make me feel worthless again. Especially not you. She turned and walked back to her place beside Rhea. The female alpha looked at Corvin with something like satisfaction. Well then, Rhea said. Shall we discuss the rogue situation? Corvin stood frozen, unable to move, unable to speak. Because in that moment, watching Tamsin take her place among wolves who valued her, watching the gold flicker in her eyes like captured starlight, he understood with devastating clarity exactly what he had lost. And he had no idea how to get it back. The negotiations dragged on for 3 days. 3 days of sitting across the table from him. 3 days of feeling his eyes on her, heavy with words he wasn't allowed to speak. 3 days of pretending the bond in her chest wasn't screaming for completion. Tamsin held herself together through sheer force of will. They discussed rogue patrol routes, supply lines, communication protocols, all the dry, practical matters of a military alliance between 2 packs. Corvin was intelligent and strategic, she had to admit. His proposals were sound, his knowledge of the terrain was extensive, but she noticed other things too. The way he kept his hands hidden beneath the table, as if concealing something. The pallor of his skin, gray beneath the surface like frost creeping beneath glass. The slight tremor in his voice when he spoke too long. The way his beta, Aldrich, watched him with an expression that looked almost satisfied. Something was wrong with him. You're staring. Tamsin blinked, realizing Veda had appeared beside her. The evening session had ended, and the great hall was emptying as wolves retreated to their quarters. I'm not staring, she muttered. I'm observing. Observing what? Tamsin hesitated. He's sick. I can see it. The curse. Veda nodded slowly. It's progressing faster than I expected. He doesn't have much time left. Good. The word came out automatic, defensive, but it tasted wrong on her tongue. Veda said nothing, only watched her with those knowing amber eyes. I don't care, Tamsin insisted. He chose this. He rejected me. Whatever happens to him is his own fault. Perhaps. Veda paused. But I wonder, do you truly wish him dead? Or do you simply wish him to feel the pain you felt? Tamsin opened her mouth to respond, but a commotion at the entrance cut her off. A scout burst through the doors, breathless and wild-eyed. Rogues, he gasped. A hunting party was attacked at the Eastern Pass, 6 of ours, 2 dead, the rest trapped. The hall erupted into chaos. Alpha Rhea was on her feet instantly, issuing orders. Warriors scrambled for weapons. Within minutes, a rescue party was being assembled. I'm going, Tamsin said, already moving toward the door. Veda caught her arm. Tamsin. Those are my packmates now. She pulled free gently. I won't hide while they die. She was halfway to the door when a cold hand closed around her wrist. Corvin. You're not going alone, he said. Tamsin wrenched her arm away. Don't touch me. Those rogues aren't ordinary wolves. His voice was low, urgent. My scouts have been tracking them for weeks. They're organized, coordinated. Someone is controlling them. Then stay here and coordinate. She turned away. I don't need your protection. This isn't about protection. He stepped in front of her, blocking her path. I've seen what they do to prisoners. I've seen the bodies they leave behind. You don't know what you're walking into. And you do? Yes. Something dark moved behind his eyes. Because I've been hunting them since before you left Thornwick. Since before... He stopped, his jaw clenching. Since before what? Silence. Corvin. Ria's voice cut through the tension. If you have information about these rogues, now is the time to share it. He turned to face the Ravencrest Alpha, his expression grim. They're not random attacks, he said. They're recruitment. Someone is building an army in the mountains. Wolves are being taken, turned, made into something else. Turned into what? Ria demanded. I don't know yet. But the attack started 6 months ago. Shortly after... He stopped again, his gaze flickering to Tamsin. Shortly after what? Tamsin pressed. Corvin's hands curled into fists at his sides. The tremor in them was visible now. Shortly after a seer in my territory delivered a prophecy, he said quietly, about a wolf with golden eyes who would either save the northern packs or destroy them entirely. Every eye in the room turned to Tamsin. She felt the weight of their gazes like a physical pressure. The gold in her eyes, the power she had only just begun to understand, suddenly felt less like a gift and more like a target painted on her back. You knew, she breathed, staring at Corvin. You knew about the prophecy. You knew what I might become. Yes. Is that why you rejected me? Her voice cracked despite herself. Because you were afraid of what I would be? No. He took a step toward her, and for the first time, she saw something break behind his cold mask. Pain. Raw and devastating. I rejected you because I was trying to protect you. The prophecy said that whoever claimed the golden-eyed wolf would draw the attention of ancient enemies. I thought... His voice caught. I thought if I pushed you away, if I made you hate me enough to leave, they wouldn't find you. You would be safe. The words hung in the air between them. Tamsin's heart was pounding so hard she could barely think. You were protecting me? She whispered. Badly, stupidly. In the worst way possible. He laughed, and the sound was hollow. I told you that you meant nothing because I thought it would save your life. I didn't realize... That it would nearly end it? Tamsin's voice sharpened. I almost died in those mountains, Corvin. I was ready to let the cold take me because I believed every word you said. He flinched as if she had struck him. I know. His voice was barely audible. And I will spend whatever time I have left trying to earn your forgiveness. But right now, people are dying. Your packmates are trapped. And the wolves, hunting them. He met her eyes, and she saw the truth there, terrible and certain. They're hunting them because of you, Tamsin. Because someone knows what you are. And they're coming for you next. Before she could respond, the scout at the door shouted again. Movement on the eastern ridge. They're coming this way. The night exploded into chaos. The moon rose full and silver over Ravencrest, casting the valley in pale light. Tamsin stood in the center of a sacred grove at the heart of the territory, surrounded by ancient oaks whose branches had witnessed countless bondings over the centuries. Veda had prepared the space. Candles flickered in a wide circle, their flames steady despite the winter wind. Incense burned, filling the air with sage and cedar. The ground beneath her bare feet hummed with old power. This was where her mother had been born, where generations of first wolves had claimed their mates and bound their souls. Now it was her turn. Corvin stood across from her, supported by two of Rhea's warriors. He had insisted on walking the final steps himself, and they had reluctantly released him at the edge of the circle. He swayed but remained upright, his frost-covered face set with determination. He looked like death. The ice had spread to his temples, crystallizing in his dark hair like frozen tears. His lips were blue, his breath coming in shallow gasps that misted in the cold air. But his eyes, those gray eyes that had haunted her dreams, burned with a fire that the curse could not extinguish. "You don't have to do this," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I meant what I said. I won't let you risk. I already told you." Tamsin stepped forward, closing the distance between them. "It's not your choice anymore." She reached up and touched his face. The cold seared her fingertips, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she let her power rise, that golden warmth that lived in her blood, and pushed it into him through her touch. Corvin gasped. For just a moment, color returned to his cheeks. The frost on his skin retreated slightly. "How did you—" "First wolf blood." She smiled slightly. "Apparently it's good for more than just looking intimidating." A sound escaped him, half laugh, half sob. His hand came up to cover hers, pressing her palm more firmly against his cheek. "I love you." The words tumbled out of him, raw and desperate. "I know I have no right to say it. I know I destroyed any claim I had to your heart. But I love you, Tamsin. I have loved you since the moment we touched. I will love you until the last breath leaves my body, whether that's tonight or in 50 years. Tears burned behind her eyes. This was the moment. The choice she had been dreading and longing for in equal measure. To complete the bond, she had to open her heart completely. She had to let go of every shred of anger, every lingering doubt, and every instinct that screamed at her to protect herself. She had to trust him. Not because he had earned it, not because he deserved it, but because she chose to. "I forgive you," she whispered. The words fell from her lips like stones dropping into still water. She felt them ripple through her chest, through the bond, through the very air between them. "I forgive you for the words you said. I forgive you for the pain you caused. I forgive you for the months I spent believing I was worthless." She took a shaky breath. "And I love you too. Despite everything. Because of everything. I love you." Corvin's eyes widened, and then she kissed him. The bond ignited. Golden light exploded outward from where their lips met, flooding the grove with warmth so intense that the candles flared and the frost on the ground melted instantly. Tamsin felt the connection snap into place, not just the faint thread that had linked them before, but something vast and unbreakable, a bridge of pure light connecting her soul to his. She could feel everything. His heartbeat, struggling against the ice, his fear that he would fail her, his overwhelming, all-consuming love that burned brighter than any cold could extinguish. And he could feel her strength, forged in years of invisibility, her pain, slowly healing, her choice to love him anyway, despite every reason not to. The curse fought back. Tamsin felt it, a wall of ice slamming against the warmth of the bond, trying to freeze the connection before it could fully form. The cold surged through Corvin's body, racing toward his heart, desperate to finish what it had started. No, she refused. Tamsin poured everything she had into the bond, every ounce of First Wolf power, every drop of love and forgiveness and fierce determination. She burned brighter and hotter than she had ever burned before, her eyes blazing gold, her skin radiating heat that turned the winter air to summer. The ice cracked. Corvin cried out, his body arching as the curse shattered inside him. Golden fire raced through his veins, burning away the frost, melting the cold that had lived in his bones for generations. The bond pulsed between them, stronger and brighter with each passing second. And then, a horn sounded in the distance. Tamsin's eyes snapped open. The golden light faded. The bond settled into place, warm and steady in her chest. But outside the grove, Chaos had erupted. "They're here." Rhea burst through the tree line, her face grim. "Fenwick's army. They've breached the northern border." "No. Not now. Not when they were so close." Tamsin looked at Corvin. The frost was gone from his skin. Color had returned to his face. But he was still weak. The curse had been broken, but his body needed time to recover. "Go," he said, reading her expression. "I'll follow as soon as I can stand." "I'm not leaving you." "You have to." He gripped her hand, his touch warm for the first time since she had known him. "Your pack needs you. Your grandmother needs you. And I refuse to be the reason Ravencrest falls." Tamsin hesitated. The bond sang between them, whole and complete, filling her with strength she had never known. He was right. She was needed. "Don't you dare die before I get back," she said fiercely. A real smile crossed his face, the first genuine smile she had ever seen from him. "I wouldn't dream of it." She kissed him once more, brief and hard, then turned and ran toward the sounds of battle. The northern border was chaos. Wolves clashed in the darkness, their snarls and howls echoing off the mountain walls. Blood stained the snow. Bodies lay scattered across the frozen ground, some from Ravencrest, others bearing the crimson markings of Bloodmoor. Fenwick had brought an army. Tamsin shifted mid-stride, her human form giving way to something far more powerful. The first wolf within her surged to the surface, and when she landed on 4 paws, she was no longer the small, forgettable Omega she had once been. She was massive, larger than any wolf had a right to be, her fur shimmering gold in the moonlight, her eyes blazing with ancient fire. She tore through the enemy lines like a force of nature. Wolves scattered before her. Those foolish enough to stand their ground fell beneath her claws and teeth. She moved with a speed and power that shouldn't have been possible, the first wolf blood singing in her veins, demanding blood and victory. She found Rhea fighting at the center of the battle, surrounded by enemies. The Alpha of Ravencrest was wounded, a deep gash across her shoulder, but she refused to fall. She stood over the body of a fallen packmate, snarling defiance at the wolves circling her. Tamsin crashed into them like a golden meteor. When the last enemy fell, Rhea looked at her with something like awe. "The bond," she panted. "It worked?" Tamsin shifted back to human form, her naked body steaming in the cold air. One of Rhea's warriors quickly threw a cloak over her shoulders. "It worked. But Corvin is still recovering. We need to hold them until he's strong enough to fight." "We're trying." Rhea grimaced, pressing a hand to her wound. "But Fenwick hasn't committed his full force yet. He's waiting." "For what?" A voice rang out across the battlefield, amplified by some dark magic. "For you, First Wolf." The fighting paused. Every head turned toward the ridge overlooking the northern valley. Alpha Fenwick stood there, illuminated by torchlight, his massive form silhouetted against the night sky. He was enormous, easily the largest wolf Tamsin had ever seen in human form, with shoulders like a bear and hands that could crush skulls. His face was scarred, his eyes black as pitch, and he radiated a malevolence that made her skin crawl. But he wasn't alone. Beside him, bound in silver chains, knelt Veda. Tamsin's blood turned to ice. "Did you really think I wouldn't take precautions?" Fenwick's voice dripped with amusement. "The old witch wandered too far from the sacred grove. My scouts found her trying to gather herbs for your precious bonding ritual." "Let her go." Tamsin's voice shook with fury. "This is between you and me." "Oh, it's between all of us, little wolf." Fenwick descended the ridge, dragging Veda behind him. "You see, I've wanted the First Wolf bloodline for a very long time. Imagine my delight when I learned that not only had the last heir survived, but she had bonded with a dying alpha whose pack would crumble without him." He stopped a dozen yards away, close enough for Tamsin to see the cruelty in his eyes. "Surrender yourself to me, and I'll let the old woman live. I'll even spare this pathetic sanctuary pack of yours." His smile widened. "Refuse, and I'll kill everyone you love, starting with your grandmother." Veda lifted her head. Despite the chains, Despite the blood trickling from a cut on her forehead, her eyes were fierce. "Don't you dare," she said to Tamsin. "Don't you dare give him what he wants. I've lived long enough. I've seen my daughter again in you. That's more than I ever hoped for." "Grandmother, listen to me." Veda's voice cracked with urgency. "Your mother didn't die of sickness. She was murdered. Poisoned by someone who wanted to ensure the first wolf bloodline ended with her." The world narrowed to a point. "Who?" Tamsin whispered. Veda's eyes shifted. Not to Fenwick, but to a figure emerging from the shadows behind him. Aldrich. The beta of Thornwick walked forward with a smile that made Tamsin's stomach turn. He had escaped somehow. He was here. With Fenwick. Exactly where he had always intended to be. "Your mother was getting too close to the truth," Aldrich said casually. She was starting to remember her heritage, starting to wonder if her daughter might carry the same power. "I couldn't have that. So I slipped into your village during the winter sickness and added a little something extra to her medicine." Rage erupted through Tamsin's body. Her mother, her gentle, loving mother who had died in her arms, who had whispered with her last breath that Tamsin was special, that Tamsin was loved, and that Tamsin would find her way, murdered by this monster. "I'm going to kill you," Tamsin said, and her voice was not her own. It was deeper, older, resonating with power that made the ground tremble. "I'm going to tear you apart and scatter your ashes to the winds." Aldrich's smile flickered. Fenwick laughed. "Such fire, I'm going to enjoy breaking you." He raised a hand, claws extending toward Veda's throat. "Now, surrender, or watch your grandmother die." Tamsin's mind raced. She couldn't let Veda die, but she couldn't surrender either. If Fenwick gained control of her bloodline, he would become unstoppable. There had to be another way. And then she felt it. The bond. Pulsing warm and strong in her chest. Corvin was coming. She just needed to buy time. "Fine," she said, raising her hands in surrender. "You win. I'll come with you." "Tamsin, no!" Veda cried. Fenwick's eyes gleamed with triumph. A wise decision. Tamsin walked forward slowly, her head bowed, the picture of defeat. But inside, the first wolf was gathering its strength. And behind her, somewhere in the darkness, she felt her mate drawing closer with every second. Fenwick's claws were inches from her throat when Tamsin struck. She had been counting her steps, measuring the distance, waiting for exactly the right moment. When Fenwick reached for her, confident in his victory, she dropped to her knees and let the first wolf explode outward. Golden fire erupted from her body in a blazing sphere that sent Fenwick flying backward. His wolves scattered, howling in pain as the flames licked at their fur. The silver chains binding Veda shattered like glass, the metal melting instantly against the heat of ancient power. "Get her out of here!" Tamsin roared at Rhea's warriors. They moved instantly, pulling Veda away from the chaos while Tamsin turned to face Fenwick. The massive alpha had recovered faster than she expected. He rose from the scorched earth with murder in his eyes, his body beginning to shift into something monstrous. Not quite wolf, not quite human, but something in between. Dark magic pulsed around him, the same corruption that had allowed him to amplify his voice earlier. "You think your little fire tricks can stop me?" He laughed, the sound distorted by his transformation. "I've been preparing for this moment for 20 years. I've consumed the power of a dozen witches. I am beyond anything you can imagine." He lunged. Tamsin met him head-on. They clashed with a force that cracked the frozen ground beneath them. His claws raked across her shoulder, drawing blood. Her flames scorched his flesh, leaving blackened wounds that healed almost instantly. They were evenly matched, her ancient bloodline against his stolen magic. But she was tiring. The bond completion had drained her. The battle had drained her more. And Fenwick was relentless, pressing his advantage with savage glee. "Your mother screamed when she died," he hissed in her ear as they grappled. "Aldrich told me. She screamed for her daughter, for the child she would never see grow up, and now you'll join her." Rage and grief surged through Tamsin. Her flames flared brighter, but so did Fenwick's dark power. They were locked in stalemate, each trying to overwhelm the other. And then a new presence crashed into the battle. Corvin hit Fenwick like a thunderbolt. The Alpha of Thornwick moved with a speed and power that Tamsin had never seen from him. The curse was gone, and in its place was the full strength of the Blackthorn bloodline, generations of alpha power that had been suppressed by the ice in his veins. His wolf form was massive, pure black, with silver eyes that blazed with fury. Together, they drove Fenwick back. The enemy Alpha snarled, lashing out with claws and dark magic, but he couldn't fight them both. Tamsin's fire burned away his shadows. Corvin's strength matched his blow for blow. Step by step, they forced him toward the edge of the cliff overlooking Ravencrest's central valley. "This isn't over," Fenwick spat, blood dripping from his monstrous jaws. "Even if you kill me, others will come. The first wolf bloodline is too valuable. You'll never be safe, never." Corvin shifted to human form just long enough to speak. "She will always be safe," he said quietly. "Because I will spend every moment of my life protecting her. That's what a true mate does." He looked at Tamsin. She understood. They moved as one. Corvin seized Fenwick's arms, holding him immobile despite the Alpha's thrashing. Tamsin stepped forward, placed her hands on Fenwick's chest, and let the first wolf burn. Golden fire poured into him, not the external flames she had used before, but something deeper. Something that sought out the stolen magic in his veins and consumed it from within. Fenwick screamed as the power he had spent decades accumulating turned to ash inside him. When the light faded, nothing remained but a hollow shell. Fenwick collapsed, his body withered and empty, all the unnatural strength stripped away. He was still alive, barely, but he would never threaten anyone again. "It's over," Tamsin breathed. Corvin pulled her into his arms. She buried her face against his chest, feeling his heartbeat strong and steady beneath her cheek. The bond sang between them, whole and complete, filling her with warmth that chased away the exhaustion and grief. "Aldrich," she said suddenly, pulling back. "Where is—" A commotion from the battlefield answered her question. Ria's warriors were dragging the former beta forward, his arms bound behind his back. He had tried to flee during the chaos, but Ravencrest wolves had cut off his escape. Tamsin walked toward him. Aldrich's face was pale with fear, all his arrogance stripped away. "Wait," he stammered. "We can make a deal. I know secrets, about Thornwick, about other packs, about— You killed my mother." The words silenced him. "You poisoned her while she was weak. You let her die believing she had failed to protect me. And then you spent years watching me suffer, knowing that you were the reason I had no one." Tamsin's eyes blazed gold. "There is no deal. There is no mercy. There is only justice." She didn't use her fire. That would have been too quick, too clean. Instead, she turned to Ria. "He's yours?" she said. "Ravencrest's justice for the murder of one of your daughters." Ria's smile was cold. "We have very specific traditions for those who kill our own." Aldrich's screams echoed through the valley as they dragged him away. Tamsin didn't watch. She turned back to Corvin, back to the mate bond that pulsed warm and golden in her chest, back to the future she had never dared to imagine. Spring came early to Ravencrest that year. The snow melted from the peaks, replaced by wildflowers that carpeted the valley in shades of purple and gold. Rivers swelled with fresh water. Birds returned to the forests, filling the air with songs that had been absent through the long winter. And in the great hall of Thornwick Manor, 300 wolves gathered to witness a coronation. Tamsin stood at the center of the hall, dressed in a gown of deep crimson that matched the formal cloak draped over her shoulders. Her hair was braided with threads of gold, and around her throat hung a pendant that had belonged to her mother, recovered from Thornwick's archives after Aldrich's true crimes had been revealed. She was no longer the invisible Omega who had stood at the back of bonding ceremonies, hoping and praying for someone to see her. She was the Alpha Queen of Thornwick. Corvin stood beside her, tall and strong, the curse nothing but a distant memory. The month since Fenwick's defeat had transformed him as much as her. The cold, distant Alpha was gone, replaced by a man who smiled freely, who laughed often, and who looked at her with such obvious adoration that it made the court gossip endlessly. "Are you ready?" he murmured, his hand finding hers. "I've been ready my entire life," she replied. "I just didn't know it." The ceremony was brief, but meaningful. Vows were spoken, crowns were placed. And when Corvin turned to address the assembled wolves, his voice rang clear through the hall. "Many of you knew my father. You knew his coldness, his distance, his inability to connect with those he ruled. You believed that was simply the nature of Blackthorn Alphas, that we were cursed to be as frozen as the mountains we came from." A ripple of murmurs passed through the crowd. "You were right. We were cursed. For 7 generations, my bloodline has been trapped in ice, forbidden from loving our true mates under penalty of death. My father lived with that curse, his father before him. And I believed I was destined for the same fate." He looked at Tamsin, his gray eyes soft with emotion. But this woman, this incredible, stubborn, powerful woman, refused to let me die. She broke a curse that had endured for centuries. She saved my life when I had given her every reason to let me perish. And she taught me something I had forgotten was possible. He raised their joined hands. She taught me how to love. The hall erupted in cheers. Tamsin felt tears sliding down her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. These were not tears of sorrow or shame. These were tears of joy, of completion, of finally being seen. The celebration lasted well into the night. Wolves from both Thornwick and Ravencrest mingled freely, old rivalries forgotten in the wake of everything that had changed. Veda held court near the fire, telling stories of the first wolves to pups who listened with wide eyes. Rhea and Corvin discussed treaties and alliances, laying the groundwork for a partnership between their packs that would ensure peace for generations. And when the moon rose full and silver above the manor, Corvin led Tamsin away from the crowd to a quiet balcony overlooking the grounds. "I have something for you," he said. From his pocket, he withdrew a small box. Inside, nestled on velvet, was a ring, a band of gold set with a stone that glowed with inner fire, like captured sunlight. "This belonged to the first Alpha of my line," Corvin said quietly. "It was meant to be given to his true mate, but the curse prevented it. It has been passed down for 7 generations, waiting for someone worthy to wear it." He took her hand. "You are more than worthy, Tamsin. You are everything I never knew I needed, and everything I don't deserve. You are my mate, my queen, my heart. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to be the man you deserve." Tamsin looked at the ring, then at him. "You already are," she whispered. He slid the ring onto her finger. The stone flared with golden light, resonating with the first wolf power in her blood. It felt right, perfect, like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. Corvin cupped her face in his hands and kissed her softly. The bond between them pulsed with joy. Later, in the privacy of their chambers, they lay tangled together beneath silk sheets. The fire had burned low, casting dancing shadows across the walls. Outside, wolves howled their celebration to the moon. But inside, there was only peace. "I was so afraid," Tamsin admitted, her head resting on his chest. "When I walked away from Thornwick that night, I thought I was walking toward death. I thought there was nothing left for me." Corvin's arms tightened around her. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what I put you through." "I know." She lifted her head to look at him. "But if it hadn't happened, if you hadn't driven me away, I never would have found Ravencrest. I never would have met my grandmother. I never would have discovered who I really am." She smiled slightly. "You tried to destroy me. Instead, you set me free." He traced his fingers along her cheek, his touch gentle. "I called you nothing. I said you meant nothing to me. It was the worst lie I've ever told. I know that now. You were never nothing, Tamsin." His voice was fierce. You were always everything. I was just too afraid to see it." She leaned down and kissed him, slow and deep. "Then see me now," she whispered against his lips. "See me for the rest of our lives." "Always," he promised. "Always." And as the night deepened around them, Tamsin finally understood. She had spent her whole life believing she was invisible, unworthy, nothing. But she had never been nothing. She had been a fire waiting to ignite, a power waiting to awaken, a love waiting to be claimed. And now, wrapped in the arms of her mate, surrounded by pack and family and belonging, she burned brighter than she ever had before. Not because someone finally saw her, but because she had finally learned to see herself. The words weren't meant for her ears, but Tamsin heard every single one. "She means nothing to me." That was what he said. That was what she believed. And for one dark, desperate night, those words nearly destroyed her. But here's the truth they never tell you about being called nothing. Sometimes it's the breaking that sets you free. Tamsin walked away from Thornwick with nothing but the clothes on her back and a heart full of shattered dreams. She walked into the wilderness expecting to die. She walked through darkness so complete that she forgot what light looked like. And yet, she emerged as fire, as power, as the last daughter of an ancient bloodline that had shaped the world before packs existed. She found family she never knew she had. She discovered strength she never knew she possessed. And she broke a curse that had imprisoned her mate's bloodline for 7 generations. The alpha who called her nothing? He spent months dying without her. He crossed mountains to beg her forgiveness. He fought beside her against impossible odds. And he will spend the rest of his life proving that those cruel words were the greatest lie he ever told. Because Tamsin was never nothing. She was everything. She just needed to walk through the fire to remember. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe for more stories like this one. Leave a comment telling me what you thought. I read every single one, and they mean more than you know. Until next time.